All right. Welcome back to Carnegie Mellon.
It's great to be here. I
Yeah.
appreciate being in the siesta slot, Sean. That's nice, where everybody's lunch is really hitting home.
So some of the folks in the audience might be familiar with MSA Safety and Safetyio, and I'm guessing some of the folks in the audience are not. Maybe we start there. Can you just give us a little bit of history before we jump into the corporate startup?
Yeah, definitely. So MSA, the safety company, has been in Pittsburgh. It was started in Pittsburgh 108 years ago by two gentlemen who experienced an explosion in a mine and worked with Thomas Edison to patent the first ever cap lamp that was electric driven and not flame driven. And it grew from there over the past 100 years to where we are now, where MSA is a $1.5 billion company with locations all around the world. And then Safetyio started in 2018 as a software subsidiary within MSA, and I'm assuming we'll get into the good stuff around how that started and why and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's exciting, I think, to spotlight Safetyio as a case study because of the connection with Carnegie Mellon, and we'll definitely talk about that. Just thematically, I think it's also a great choice because we've talked about today just getting started. And I think your story illustrates a great example of how a big company, very mature company, mature industry can just get started, and it continues on a path from there. So let's go to the first question, which is the origin story of Safetyio. Can you tell us, take us back 5 years, as you said, 2018. What was the executive mandate to explore data-driven strategies?
So I'll go back a little bit further. So I mentioned that we're a 108-year-old company. MSA is a 108-year-old company. And over the past 100 years, MSA grew into a huge safety equipment provider. So we design, manufacture, and sell safety equipment across the industrial markets and as well as the fire service markets. And in the late 2000s, early 2010s, our portfolio had gotten pretty unwieldy. It was time to really focus in on the things that we did best. And the executive leadership team looked at our portfolio and really started to hone in on the areas that were driving the most value and the places that we really believed that we could be the leaders. If we weren't already the leaders, where else could we lead? We divested companies, we divested product portfolios, and we brought new ones on. And in that time, as that engine got prepped and warmed up, the executives were then looking at the business and saying, well, how are we going to fulfill our mission at the next level? Our mission has been the same since the beginning. 108 years, it's always been that men and women may work in safety and that they, their families, and communities can live in health throughout the world. It's been the same from the start. And they wanted to know, how are we going to not just grow the core areas of our business, but how do we accelerate that? How do we also look in new areas so we can elevate the way that we fulfill that mission that was set for us 108 years ago? And from that, along the way with a variety of other options, we also started looking at different types of ways we could connect experiences. Many of our pieces of equipment, whether they were electronic or otherwise, weren't necessarily sharing data back with us so that we could do more with it. We could support customer experiences that were new. And we needed to take a hard look at our products and say, okay, if we want to fulfill our mission at a deeper level, that means we need to really understand our customers at a deeper level, the types of work that they're doing, the workflows and processes that they have in place. How do we actually go beyond the pieces of equipment that we put on a person and look at them holistically and make their lives that much safer and give them better opportunity to do that? And that's where the interest in collecting, aggregating, and understanding data and making data-informed choices about how we support solution sales beyond just the widget was where Safetyio was born.
Yeah, there was an innovation idea around the data for sure.
Absolutely.
And then I think it's also fair to say there was an innovation around the business model because
Correct.
It was very different
Yes.
for MSA Safety to take that on. Can you talk a little bit about how the company aligned on the business strategy for Safetyio and what market or customer signals were most compelling?
Sure. I'll start with the second one first. So because of how long MSA has been around and the categories that we were selling into and the types of products we had in our portfolio, we had the benefit of seeing some other organizations that were more narrowly focused start to actually tease and actually be successful with certain types of solutions that we were interested in. So in a sense, some of our competitors, they were at the bleeding edge, and we wanted to be then quickly at the leading edge with them, and this gave us an opportunity to do that. The other thing I would say, so the market was ready. We were seeing signs where the market was ready and which customers were ready for this type of activity. Now, what happened on the corporate side for how we went about creating Safetyio, there was a lot of trust from the very beginning from the executive leadership team and the layers just below them that we needed to do something different. MSA had a way of doing things for 108 years for building products and hardware that we knew wasn't going to work for software. Building software applications and successful solutions, things were measured differently. It happened at a different pace. The way that you engaged with customers was very different than our traditional sales model. So they just said, okay, we trust you. And we said, great, now we have to find people that we can lean on for wisdom, one of whom is sitting right next to me, and the other is right there with Sean, that we leaned on as an advisory council, and as well as the engagement with the Corporate Startup Lab in the spring semester of 2018. And that was a great engagement. In fact, Nick is sitting in the back. He was one of the students in our group who was part of that initial experience. And they helped us tremendously when it came to look at market opportunities, look at the types of offerings that we were considering, making sure that they were the right fit, looking at what the competitors were doing and how we could create our own competitive advantage in that space, what other IP is out there, which is where Nick played a part. And a host of other things. And they also did some really exciting things within the campus. They ran some hackathons. We sponsored some activities like that. And it also changed the way that we looked at how we came up with solutions within our own organization.
One of the favorite things I think about that story that I reflect on is the outside-in thinking, right? Here you are, a 108-year-old company, and they were open to all these new ideas. What the heck is a hackathon, right? You probably had to explain that. So that's an awesome story. Next question for you is, what was it like getting the business unit off the ground? Because this is a startup, right? This was a corporate startup.
Yeah.
How was the group structured then, and how would you compare that to now, 5 years later?
So it's very different today, but it's a sign of the success we've had over the past 5 years. So when we started, MSA had a handful of software application developers and a couple of DevOps people. So we were a pretty small group. And what we did is we kind of took that software organization. We already had a good sense of what the architectural needs were, the data structures we need were, the developer types and everything. We had some good context there. What we didn't have was a business team that could function and really start to drive and crank the engine around getting to market and the business models and innovating and changing and pivoting as we learn more from the market. So in the beginning, we quickly made sure we hired, we had a sales manager who came from outside. Again, we had a ton of great sales experience. We still have wonderful sales teams, but they didn't understand how to sell solutions. They didn't understand how to sell software. We needed somebody who could help us with that. We hired a woman who had retired from the airline industry after 25 years of service to be our customer success manager because she worked in a group. She managed a group with all the conflict resolution when your flights don't go as they expect to. She was the one who was leading that group. I was like, you need to be with us. This is going to be perfect because we need somebody who really cares about the customer experience and will hold us accountable to that the whole way through. We also had our own financial analyst, and we hired a data innovation manager to help us try to look at all this. So at the end of the day, everyone on that business team wore all kinds of hats because it felt like a battle from day one, a good one. We were excited to be in it, but we knew that there was so much work to do, and it was just this core team of 5 business people that were just trying to make it work, figure out some things that would stick, and really drive those as hard as we could for the next few years. The result of that is now 5 years later, my whole team has been broken up. Everyone in that group has moved into the MSA organization, so we've grown from this startup entity, and we're now institutionalizing the practices and the things that we've done within Safetyio up into the MSA organization. So it's wonderful to see the fruits of our labors seeing also then kind of blossom into greater career opportunities for everybody in that group. And even within that experience, we're shifting what Safetyio is in the MSA ecosystem. We're not as much kind of this pure entrepreneurial venture that's going out and selling, commercializing solutions and doing everything around it. One of the ways we talk about it is we're kind of looking at ourselves as the AWS versus Amazon. We're kind of positioning ourselves as this data architecture and engine and software development space that then gets leveraged to help us drive the safety mission of the greater MSA, and how other parts of the organization and even our partnerships start to leverage that out into the marketplace.
And it's probably worth noting that you yourself did not have startup experience, right? So this was a bit of a leap of faith for you. And I know some of the folks in the audience are hiring teams like yours, and they're probably thinking, wow, how do I find somebody like Matt? That you were willing to take that risk, the career risk, because let's face it, you probably had a pretty stable career trajectory until Safetyio fell in your lap, right?
Correct. Yeah, I've been blessed with a wonderful career, and I had already been with MSA for 8 years and been in traditional product management, and that would have been an easy choice. But I've also always had an entrepreneurial itch. My father's an entrepreneur. I dabbled in it whenever my the first company I worked for was bought out and my job was redundant. I said, oh, what the heck, I'll hang a shingle and try something. And it didn't work, but that's okay. That's how you learn. And from there, the stability of a corporate role was great for our family and where we were. But when the opportunity, like when my boss, Gustavo, came to me and said, oh, they're thinking about doing this, I was like, when? Like right now? I'm ready. Like I want to do this. Because the opportunity to do something entrepreneurial within a company of that stature with that type of stability gave the team the confidence that we could build something and not feel like it's quite the same level of risk. I think there's a beauty in that the executive leadership challenged us and trusted us at the same time and allowed things to happen without micromanaging how it all turned out.
That's a great summary of what an intrapreneur is, I think. What were the biggest obstacles that Safetyio faced in the startup phase, and how did the group overcome those challenges?
So, honestly, the biggest challenges were not the customers. The market was ready. It had been demonstrated that the market was ready. Now, something we did learn as we got to our customers is that there were many more people involved in the decision making now that you were starting to run data out of their organization to places that they needed to be able to trust. So that part was challenging, but not insurmountable, right? You get the right certifications, you show them what you're doing with the data and how it's being used and everything that was just being talked about on stage. The biggest challenges were internal, and they were people and process challenges. When you challenge the status quo and you want to offer something new and people don't see the immediate benefit, it can be really hard to get those people on board and getting on the bus with you and driving in the same direction. So we experienced a lot of that, and we did an extraordinary amount of internal marketing and just pushing the envelope and showing where we were having success and showing where we knew and we were learning to show them, like, listen, we don't know how all this is going to turn out, but we believe this is the right direction and customers will validate it, and we found places that they would validate it, and we went with it. And you find the advocates. We created specific advocacy programs that we had people in every department that were like subtly helping us along the way. And I'm a middle child, So one of the early challenges that I found was in the law department. We had never had to deal with the types of contracts and agreements and terms of use and all these new privacy things that MSA never really had to deal with because we were just selling pieces of equipment. And I remember going to the law, and they're wonderful partners. So if this is being recorded in any way, I want them to all know that I love them very much.
They're not listening.
Yeah. So, but seriously, we went to the law department and we said, hey, we want to do a click to agree. Just like, hey, I want to subscribe, let's go. And the response was literally this. They said, that's unconscionable. And I said, oh, challenge accepted. So over the next 4 years, we just kept chipping away and saying, if you didn't have to redline and read through all these contracts, your life would get a lot easier if we could do these click-to-agrees. And we just kept working and working, and you just find the right people in those different parts of the company that help you get there.
That's probably a little bit of kudos, I think, for Sean and a little bit for me to the advisory role that we played, because we pushed you hard on that point, and we knew it was uncomfortable. But you rose to the challenge. So I'm glad you brought that up as one of the things that sticks out in your memory.
The pointed and timely, consistent advice from both of you was remarkable. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, of course, you're welcome. So you touched on a number of key success factors. Are there any others that stand out to you?
Oh, yeah. So number one, having that top-level support from the executive team the whole way, because there are a lot of people in corporations who are going to sit on the fence, and when things go well, they'll be like, see, I knew all along it was going to be wonderful. And then when they don't go well, they're like, haha, I told you that was going to be a dumpster fire. And so having consistent top-down pressure saying this is important to the company. Yes, we're we're a $1.5 billion organization. The revenue from this part of the company isn't going to be meaningful for a while, but the activity here is incredibly meaningful. They were all over that. So I have a big debt of gratitude to them for their support. Obviously, what both of you brought to the table was a huge part of it, and I would say we hired the right type of people. We specifically sought out people who were entrepreneurial, energetic. That whole venture presentation, every one of them would have been like, yes, where's the dangerous place we're going, and how can we make sure that we ram through that and make sure that it's successful? So that's a huge part of how we were successful.
So to wrap up, one last question for you. This is kind of a lightning round question.
Yes.
What are 3 suggestions to drive corporate startup success with a data-driven solution?
So I will say focus, flexibility. I'm going to three F words. Is that appropriate to say? Okay. All right. Focus, flexibility, and fearlessness. Just having that right mix can help you get through those brick walls that drop in front of you.
Was that in the right order? Would you put fearlessness first?
Probably, but yeah, you guys, you put that formula together the way that you need it to work.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and congratulations on all the success you've had.
Thank you. Thanks, Laurie. Thank you, everybody.